Hello, everybody, and welcome to what you can see in the picture. It's Infinite Chat. I look like this today. Hello. And this is my new thing. I've done, interview series before with a friend, my friend Marie-Louise, but it's all me on my own. And I just wanted to talk to creative people. I've called it Infinite Chat. I wanted to call it Infinite Creative Chat, but that was a bit long. So Infinite Chat. And I needed a first victim to have as my first guest, and I found one, and she is the one and only, if I manage to bring her on properly, Sandra. Sandra, how do you say your second name, Sandra?
I said Koenig.
Pardon?
Koenig. I said Koenig, as if there's an A in there.
It sounds kind of, well, I don't know what it sounds. North European or German or something?
It's German. It means king in German.
Okay, but you're not in Germany.
I'm not in Germany, but my heritage is mostly German.
Okay, you're in the west coast of the States, is that right?
Yeah. I live in the San Francisco area.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for being my first victim guest. And as you just heard, I'm after interesting people, but above all, creative people. I mean, everybody is creative, but I wanted people who are, I know a lot of coaches, I know a lot of artistic people, but what I was looking for was people who have this, it's the main thing they do is create creative stuff. I mean, when I say creative, in my mind, I've got this, I'm thinking of, visible things like paintings or writing a book or photography. Not because I think other types of creativity is less creative, but it's just visual. We can look at it. So thanks for being my first guest, and I'm just going to show people a little bit about what we're going to talk about before I stop talking and let you talk. So this is your coaching website.
Yeah.
Can you just tell me what sort of coaching you do? If
I'm a transformative coach. My background, I primarily coach from the perspective of the three principles, and I work a lot with entrepreneurs and leaders, people who have big jobs.
Well, we're not really going to talk about coaching, but what is your sort of definition of a transformative coach?
Well, when I'm working with people, we're looking more at, it's not that they don't have things they want to create in the world, but what's underneath that. Like when we see the truth about how our experience is created, often we do become more creative. We see the self-limiting beliefs and thoughts that are holding us back. And there's tremendous freedom that can be found.
And here you actually say on the front page, you say find peace, resilience, and creativity. So you've already got creativity as a thing.
It's one of the things I love to coach around, which I think you do too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't really like labels, but I have kind of hijacked the word creativity. I do insist that everyone's creative, but still, I like it. I like it as a word.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, and I'm just very, very interested in creativity and innovation. And
yeah,
one of the gifts of the three principles was seeing that innate capacity for that in everyone. And so part of the transformative coaching conversations that I have is bringing that forward in people, helping them see it for themselves, that they are creative and that they have that incredible capacity to innovate always.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk quite a bit about that. Let me just show another site to you. This is another website, which is called Brand Vision, or is it Branding Harmony?
Branding Harmony.
Okay, so this is another side. Is it an older side, a newer side, a parallel side?
It's parallel. I do many things in my life. I'm fairly creative, but before I became a coach about 10 years ago, I had worked for over 20 years in the world of big branding, rebranding and initiating, branding startups. But in the, Fortune 50 realm, very, very large companies. And so when I became a coach, I saw a way I could bring coaching into the branding conversation. So one of the things I do is help entrepreneurs and companies create brands, but from the inside out. That's the
from the
brand.
inside out.
That's the branding harmony process that I do with people. Yes.
What do you mean from the inside out?
Well, the way I used to work, we would go in to these big companies and they would tell us everything about their business. And when I work with companies now, they still do that. But then we would go off, the branding experts, and come back with recommendations for what their brand could be. And the way I work now, it's more of a partnership, and the company or the entrepreneur we're hand in hand creating it together. And the answers really come from the client, not from me. It's a shift in perspective.
Okay, let me show you've got a lot of crazy colors behind you. And here is another website of yours I found. And as I understand it, this is pretty new. I think I saw you saying that this is quite a new website just a week ago or something. So
yes.
Tell me about this website.
Yeah, just barely more than a week ago, I launched a site of my paintings. And I've always been someone who likes to create images. And for many years, I was involved in a process-oriented painting studio where we would never show our paintings. The paintings were more of a journal of an inner experience. And we painted on paper, and product was not the emphasis. Anyway, several years ago, I had a moment where I saw how much I really wanted to create art that impacted people and that could be in the world. And so I've been painting at home for many years, not doing the process-oriented art. I'm a completely untrained artist, but I was getting a lot of queries around purchasing paintings, so it seemed time to have a website to make it easier for people to buy them. And that's been delightful that the people actually want to own the paintings. They want them in their house.
Yeah, that's interesting. You say that you were never trained. I mean, do you still consider that you're not trained, like officially trained?
I'm not a trained painter. I mean, my original university degree, I have a Bachelor of Science in Design. I studied graphic design. And then I have a master's in psychology. I'm somebody who loves to learn. But I've never gone to art school to learn to paint.
So do you think you need to or not?
I think some people think that I do. I don't. To me, painting is just about the joy of creating.
Yeah. When I said you, I mean, do you think one needs to go to art school? I mean, to be honest, I mean, I paint, and I paint a bit like you in that it's abstract. I mean, that might be where the similarities stop, but I never learned to paint. In fact, one of my little stories is that an art teacher hit me around the head like this when I was about 12, because I had dared to do an exercise which was supposed to be done with a charcoal pencil of a crumpled Pepsi can. And I had dared to do it in all the colors of the rainbow because I just got a new coloring set of felt tip pens for my birthday. And I was so excited about it. And the encouragement I got from the teacher was a hit round the head, because you could do that in those days, and being called an idiot for not having done what she said. Why am I saying that? So I mean, that kind of stopped my artistic flow dead until I had to discover it for myself through frustration with other stuff that I thought I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I mean,
so I haven't trained, and I'm happy that I haven't trained.
I think that there's pros and cons to anything. I think it would be really fun to get a Master of Fine Arts and be surrounded by other people who love to paint. And it's not that I think I need it. I just love learning. And I think that I am always learning more about materials. Like there's just a lot I didn't know.
So why are you attracted more to abstract? I mean, in terms of what you do, what you produce, why abstract as opposed to more lively things? Hang on, I was looking somewhere. There was something I read on your site. Some works are contemplative, some more forceful, but all are an experiment to capture the feeling or energy of the moment. I think there was another one as well. Yeah. Fascinated by color and texture, Sandra uses a range of mark-making techniques and painterly gestures, I like your language, to create powerful abstractions that reflect her vision. So why the abstract stuff?
I think I have just always been a big fan of modern art. and of abstract art. I could stand in a museum and stare at a Rothko for an hour and just luxuriate in the depth of color.
Huh.
And in design school, we had to draw every day. Like I can render things very realistically. Like that's a skill that can, but I don't find that doesn't touch me. That doesn't move my soul. For me, there's a play for me in the experience of using color and shape. And I don't always just use brushes. I'm, pouring paint and I'm scribbling on it. I'm scribbling on the painting when they're dry, pastels, and I'm scraping it. And sometimes I'm sanding if the painting is on wood. And I'm not necessarily just standing there with a little brush.
Yeah. It's really funny. By the way, some people are commenting. I was going to say that I wanted the first part of this to be a discussion. And then if you've got comments, if you're watching, thanks for watching, everyone. Then we'll look at your comments, once we've had a chat and you've got something to comment on. So in a while, this won't last more than an hour. In a while, we'll see if you've got comments. So if you have got questions for Sandra or for me or about art in general or anything else creative, if you like, then let us have them and we'll talk about them in a little while. Sandra, that thing about Rothko is really strange because my mother, I was always a bit dubious about my parents' tastes. For example, they played classical until I discovered there was something called pop music. So it took me many years to actually appreciate classical after that. And my mum would, but something that impressed me, my mum would come back from an exhibition in London in the Tate Gallery, I think it was, and she'd have this kind of story that I didn't get. She said she would sit on this bench in front of a Rothko. There was a Rothko room. She would sit on this bench in front of this thing and just something would happen. And I thought, that's weird, because I didn't have any sort of artistic mentality. I just thought, a picture was a picture. Oh, look, it's a picture of a cat, picture of a tree. And she would sit in front of this sort of blur, and talk about things like feeling vibrations or color fields merging into each other. And I didn't get it. And then later on, I kind of did get it. It's funny. It's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
But it's just the field of color.
I don't have anything against realistic art. I just find what wants to come out of me is abstract. And I have so much fun hearing, sometimes when I share paintings on social media, people will comment what they see. And that's fascinating to me, what people want to see in the abstraction. And
are they things that you haven't seen?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a reflection of the viewer. Sometimes people are certain that I've put a teacup in the middle of that painting. It's like, no, I haven't. I actually didn't. It's an accident that there's a little blob that looks like a teacup.
I even saw one that looked a bit like a teacup earlier. Now you come to mention it. Hang on. I'll look at your paintings in more detail.
Somebody commented that one you were just on with the black. Someone commented about the egg.
No, I was just about to say, you took the words right out of my mouth. I said, this one's got a nice fried egg up in the top there. Right. Yeah, and I guess if I want it to be a fried egg, it can be, can it? Or
yeah, of course. It can be anything you want it to be.
Yeah.
It feels like they could be just colorful Rorschach tests, like
Yeah.
Well,
I remember.
Things are quite joyful for me to paint. People will be certain that I was painting a black mood. And that's fascinating to me. Fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, that's sometimes I use my paintings in coaching, a little bit like, it's not exactly art therapy, but more like a stimulus, to get people talking. Lots of different people have different ways of getting to people talk. And I remember once I used to teach English a lot, and I took paintings in sometimes to my classes just to get them talking. And I remember taking one in, and I had done this kind of weird blobby thing in the middle with different splodges of color. I think it was brown, red, blue, and green. And it was on this kind of gray, swishy gray background. And for me, it was a really powerful metaphor of the earth spinning in space, with the blue being the sea and the green being the life, and the red being the fire of volcanoes and the sun. And what else was there? Brown was the earth. And I was so impressed with this. I just showed it to people and I said, obviously you see that it's a powerful metaphor for the earth. And some of the adults came out with a few things. I didn't tell them what it was before I said what it was for me.
Yeah.
To see what they came out with. And the adults, they didn't have that much to say. But the best one was the kids, and the little kid put his hand up and said, "I know exactly what it is. I was Mr. Will to them, Mr. Will." They said, "It's Mr. Will's washing spinning around in a washing machine." and it was, if that's what he saw, then that is what it was for him. And I had no argument with that, It was wonderful.
Isn't that amazing, though? We're quite imaginative. And I do think that's one of the abstract art, is that the viewer gets to be involved with their own imagination. Instead of us saying this is the story, they can create their own. They can have their own experience.
Yeah. I mean, isn't there a kind of parallel of that with life itself, in that our picture? I don't know about you, what you feel. What do you feel about a painting in relation to it being your painting, and then in relation to the viewer that sees it?
For me, when painting in its purest form doesn't feel like it's me. It feels like I step out of the way and something comes through me. It doesn't feel personal. I'm just the vehicle. I'm like another paintbrush.
And you feel that it's
larger.
So when you finished it, well, for a start, I don't know, how do you know when it's finished? Do you have any
Sometimes I just decide I like something, like it looks complete. I have a friend, we joke around. Sometimes I'll text her things and say, "What do you think about this one?" And she's like, "This story feels complete," even though there's not a story.
Yeah.
This one doesn't feel complete. And we joke about it. And it's interesting to have someone else, like, fresh eyes on things sometimes. And to even hold it that way, like, does it feel complete? It's just something inside is ready to set it aside to be done. Or I find it visually pleasing for some reason. I don't know. It feels random.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons I loved abstract art, it was that you can do anything, not being trained, you can do anything.
Yeah.
And because it's abstract, people can't tell you that it's not supposed to look like that.
Yeah.
And that's an incredible freedom.
Being untrained, there's no loyalty to anything.
Yeah.
To one sort of expression. Like, I know that in the art world, often you have to have kind of a style. Like, I don't have to be consistent if I'm not part of school or not part of any one kind of world of thought, the art world of thought. Yeah.
I mean, I know what you mean about it would be really interesting to learn to paint in a certain style, but I've always felt I love the fact that for me, creativity, you're creating something that hasn't existed before. You're bringing something into existence, a bit like a birth. So how on earth can people judge something that hasn't existed before? Because unless you're following a school of thought, a school of painting where it's supposed to look like this, a good artist is able to do this, 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 and this.
Yeah.
But that kind of seems a shame for me. Because if you're creating, do you have a definition of creativity, or?
I think, I don't know if I have a definition of creativity, but I think some of what you're pointing to is just people have preferences, and our minds are sort of trained to judge things instead of just be open to, like, oh, what is this? Definition of creativity? I would just say making something that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
And that can exist in so many different realms. I've always loved making things that were concrete. It's one of the things I loved about working in design. I could work on a big, say, brand for 6 months, and then there'd be evidence of it in the world. Big signs and websites and etc.
Mm.
And with paintings, it's nice to have a thing. Like I spend all this time playing with color and form and line, and then there's evidence of it.
Do you ever use painting as a metaphor, or do you encourage people that you're working with to express themselves through art?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of artists who hire me.
How do you help them?
Well, often people they run into creative blocks. They just run into something that's holding them back, and coaching can really help them move through that. Whether it's in writing or painting, or I've had musicians. I've worked with all different sorts of artists over the years.
What do you think about this idea of a creative block, or the blank page syndrome? Do you get that, or what do you think?
I don't think I get it. I do. I think there's some part of me that trusts if I just engage in the process, whatever is going on in my head, I often think it's the intellect that's in the way, will drop. And I think that was one of the gifts of being involved. I taught and was a student in this process-oriented painting for many years. I learned that what was going on in my head didn't mean anything, that I could keep painting. And that whatever I was thinking, it didn't mean anything. It wasn't a reason to stop. And I bring that to my work today. But I also have I live in a rather small house, and I have my painting set up. My little painting studio is actually under the stairs in my house. I have a modern open staircase. And it's kind of grown to expand along the whole wall of the living room. And when no one's around, I kind of push all the furniture aside, and I put tarps out, and I have paintings laying everywhere. It's sort of like if I could, my whole house would just be my painting studio. And then I clean it up for people come over so they can walk through.
So what makes you start a painting?
There's just an urge for a blank canvas. I usually have about 10, 15 paintings I'm working on at any one time. A few large ones, and then a bunch of small ones. And I'll work on one for a while, and then I'll be drawn to another one. I'll let that one dry. I work in acrylics, so they dry fairly quick. And then sometimes there's just a urge to do something like, oh, I really want to make. I can remember when I started this one, I just had such a strong urge to make something really pink.
Yeah.
A bunch of pink on a canvas.
Let's have a look at some of your paintings, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
No, not that. That. All right. So, well, you put this one as the heading one for your website. Can you tell me a little bit about this?
I think I personally have a love affair with the ocean and water. And so any of those kind of aqua colors evoke that feeling for me, but it's different for different people. And I think I use that one as the header because people really love that painting. I was just going on feedback from people that people seem connected to it. So it seemed like a good one to choose for the header. And yeah, I like the variety of shapes, and it's my favorite colors. That sort of golden orange and a kind of on the way to teal blue.
You got quite a few layers in there, I see.
Yeah,
you do a lot of layering.
I have many layers on them. I work on my paintings for quite a while usually. Yeah.
Okay, let's have a look at some others. This one, you can really see the texture well in this. If I click it, no, it stays that size, right?
Yeah, that one's not clickable, but if you go to the navigation to where it says paintings, you can click on them and see them bigger.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Okay, so where is that one? Can I find that one somewhere?
Yeah, you just kind of have to scroll.
Okay, scrolling through. Oh, some beautiful ones here. For somebody who likes abstract.
Some of them are repeating. That's interesting.
Yeah. Wow, this one is amazing. Well, I was looking for the one that. Here we are. Okay. So, did you do your website yourself?
I did. I did. With my background in design, I have that capacity.
Okay. So I clicked on it, and there's a little thing turning. The colors here are pretty amazing, quite strong. They're not soft.
Well, I'm told I'm a colorist.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
Well, maybe you are then.
I love color. I don't. I just love color.
And it's called clowning around. So, did you think that you were when you were doing this?
No, I don't think about it that way. I'm not thinking about myself or when
Okay, but you called it clowning around. You give your paintings names.
I do. And only
just for fun or random sort of names?
I put a lot of them names the night before the website went live because I've been told that helps the viewer connect. Sometimes the name aids in the connection. Like this one was different for me. I had a lot of black in the painting.
Yeah.
And yet it doesn't feel dark to me. Like I was just having a lot of fun. Like I really scribbled on this with some oil pastels, and like I love red, and I was just having fun.
Because if you look at it, you don't look at the painting necessarily and think clowning around. So people might think, okay, so this is a kind of a message from the artist on how we are to appreciate it. Maybe we're not to take it too seriously, or maybe you were clowning around when you were doing it, which is nice.
Yeah, no, I just thought I could show you the actual painting. I've got it here. It's on wood. Let's see if I can hold it into the camera.
Okay, hang on. Let me bring you on bigger.
Oh, it's on wood.
Maybe I can get rid of me. Hang on.
I'm just trying to get it in there. But you can see it's painted on a piece of wood.
Yeah.
And when you paint on wood, you can really scratch, like up here. I sanded and stuff. You can really interact with the painting differently.
Okay. And it's a nice sort of a manageable size.
Yeah, it's 12 by 12 inches. I don't know what that is in centimeters.
Yeah. And is that do you prefer a certain type of size, or it could be anything?
I think it's just at one point I bought a bunch of those wood boards, and I think you could either buy like 3 or buy 25. So I bought 25.
You bought 25. So you got 25 paintings to do.
No, but I think I have a few left. And I just lay them all on the floor and gesso them, so they're all ready to go whenever I want to use one. Fantastic.
Yeah, I just want to say to the people who are watching and have commented, I'll get your comments in just a second. I'm just going to finish off with, I was going to say to ask Sandra, actually, in the artistic process, I don't know about you, but I mean, it's like writing anything arty, I think. People often spend a lot of time trying to find their thing, maybe in business too. And I know you hear that you're supposed to have a thing from some quarters, and if you think that you haven't got one, you think, shit, I haven't got a thing. Right. And then you're sort of swimming around and you're thinking, I don't have any aim. I'm doing a bit of this, a bit of that. And then sometimes before I say anything, what about you? Do you think you've got a thing? Have you got a style, or you just do anything you like? What?
I think that it's natural for what you create to evolve. And one of the things I noticed, like I'm going to start grouping my paintings. It was a big push for me to just get the website up. But
right.
I noticed once we started sheltering in place, the quarantine, COVID started happening, my paintings became much more kind of blocky. Like they're more linear. They're less free in a certain way. So colors, but if you look at them, some of them, they're more boxed. Like if you go, like the one at the top that's in the top, that was done during the quarantine.
Okay, I'm just going to flip back to
the homepage.
Well, this is the homepage. Okay, that's interesting.
See how it's more square, like that actually, like I have a body of work I could say is 2020 COVID quarantine or something. Like there's one big thing called Quietly Quarantine. And the first day we were in shelter in place, and I was putting a little tick mark on it every day. And eventually,
is that on the paintings page?
It is. If you go to the paintings page,
yeah, that's this.
And then click on large over 20 inches. See where there's that thing you can click on.
Yeah.
And then scroll down, you can see these were all from the quarantine. They're much
Okay.
rare. But there's one I called Quietly Quarantined.
Yeah,
That's
there it is.
quite large. It's actually a very large painting. It's probably the largest I've done so far.
Okay.
But there, in one corner where there's black, there's a bunch of little blue tick marks, the lower left.
Okay, yeah, I can see that, yeah. And was that like you sort of counting off the days?
Yeah, being sheltered in place. And I've stopped counting. In the Bay Area, we haven't really come out of shelter in place because we sort of flattened the curve for a while, and then they've had this huge spike in cases like many parts of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. That brings me on to one more question before I'm getting to a couple of comments. And that is, especially with abstract, do you think we as artists should explain our paintings? For example, that's a really interesting little story, you know, that it's, okay, you've given a hint because the name, Quietly Quarantined, and you've got the kind of the little tick things. But do you think we should explain our paintings in words, or is that like a weird thing to do?
I think if you have the words, I don't always have the words. And I have heard if you want to sell your artwork, it's a good thing to do. That people like the stories. People
to have a story.
People connect to the stories. And a friend recommended, we were talking about how my art had changed during the quarantine. And she said, you should have a quarantine series. Like people relate to that.
Right.
Because my art did change. It went from being really messy and kind of a little wilder to much more kind of, it's more blocky and shaped. And that was just interesting. I didn't decide to do that. It just evolved.
I mean, I kind of like the idea that you can have both. If I wouldn't describe my paintings unless someone asked, but if someone asked, I'm happy to tell them what's behind, because if there is something deep and meaningful behind it, it seems a shame not to share that. Yeah. But the idea of describing splotches of color in words, it seems like it's not the same thing. It's even like trying to describe a poem in other words. It seems a bit strange.
Right.
I mean,
one of my hope is that my paintings, if they end up in your home or office, just remind you of some truth about life, self, that they touch your soul.
The thing I like about standing opposite a Van Gogh painting, I think you say Van Gogh in American English. We say Van Gogh or something like that. And the Dutch probably say it completely different. I look at the painting and I'm this close to it, and I can see the brush strokes. And I think that he was in the same place as me in relation to this painting, placing that brush stroke. And that, it almost gives me chills in my cheeks when I think that. Right. So when I see, for example, this quite, let's say, harsh or maybe even violent, I interpret it, as I want. This red, the red with quite a violent slash, I can imagine, what made you have this movement that is actually quite a, it's not a soft, let's put some little tone in here. It's like why did you put that red slashy line in? It's almost like
blood.
It's
interesting to hear what you see, because to me, it feels like dancing. Like I spent most of my life as a dancer, involved in different kinds of dance, and that feels like movement to me. It doesn't feel violent.
Maybe it's my serial killer background. I don't know.
Fun, yeah, but that's what's interesting. Like to you, it can look that way, and to me, it feels really different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know about you. I have this kind of feeling that once I've finished the painting, or I decide it's finished, because you can basically finish it at any time and say it's finished.
Yeah.
Or even say it's anyway, and I let it go, and I sort of let it out there.
Yeah.
And then it kind of floats around a bit until it meets its new sort of adopter.
Right. It's home. Yeah.
And that's the second part of the process. That's the sort of, then they decide what it means for them, and there's been some sort of connection. I like that idea.
That's all that matters. It doesn't matter what I see. It's like if that looks violent to you and that connects for you, fine with me.
This one makes me think there's a kind of an eye peeking out there.
Yeah, like that was, I got some feedback about that. And that's why I called it the Eye of Wisdom. But that painting probably has 20 layers on it. It changed, how it looks changed much over time.
You know, there's a funny thing. I didn't see it was called Eye of Wisdom until you just said it just now. I'd looked at the painting. I didn't look at the words.
Wow.
That's funny. Okay,
Yeah.
let's have a look at some comments. So thanks everybody for watching this very first show. If you don't know what's going on here, it's me and Sandra. She's my first guest on my new show, which is called Infinite Chat. And I'm going to focus on artistic people. They can do all sorts of stuff in their lives if they like, but I'm going to be particularly interested in the artistic process. And we've got some comments, and we've got one from, can you see these, Sandra? Can you see that comment there?
I figured out where I could see them, yes.
You can. Okay, so good evening, Sab and Sandra. I've got 𝗖𝗛𝗙𝗚𝗚𝗜𝗚 from Peru. 𝗚𝗏𝗏, by the way, is from Greece. These are kind of my friends. In fact, they did my photography masterclass. 𝗏𝗏 is saying abstract art is more inviting to the imagination.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, if you are watching, please give us questions. I'd love to have some questions that we can get into. I've got a question from 𝗖𝗛𝗙𝗚 from Peru. He's a good friend of mine. She says, "Who or what influences your paintings?" Oh, and congratulations.
I just think life influences my paintings. I in more normal times, I love to travel, and I spend a lot of time in museums in different parts of the world. And I love modern abstract art.
Do you have favorite artists? You mentioned Rothko.
Well, like it changes over time. Rothko is like definitely a current favorite. I was somewhere recently, probably 6 months ago, where there were some Rothkos, and I was just so moved. There was also a Rauschenberg exhibit at the Museum of Modern Art here, and there was this big, really messy painting on a huge piece of wood that I was I could have sat in the room with that piece of art for hours.
What happens when that happens?
You mean that willingness to just sit there and stare?
When you get absorbed by basically a bit of color, what's going on there?
I think it's touching something beyond words. Like we can put words to art, but I don't think that's the purpose of art. I think it's to touch something beyond words. Like, and in the creating comes from beyond words.
I'm still trying to understand my mother, you see.
What did you say?
I'm still trying to understand my mother. I mean, I understand what she meant, but it's interesting to hear other people's perspective, because it is kind of funny. There's quite a lot of people that would find this ridiculous, like.
But they're all immense. They're immense.
Yeah.
They're large paintings. I know there was a retrospective on Andy Warhol at the museum here in San Francisco, and a lot of his art to me has a very commercial aspect to it. But there were these huge paintings where he had folded canvas. He had like spilled paint on half of a canvas and then folded it. So then it did look like a Rorschach mark.
Right. Yeah.
They were 40 feet tall. They were spectacular. I was just in the fact that it was like a happy accident that it wasn't planned. You couldn't plan that. I love that kind of stuff.
Well, what do you think about people, or how do you see people? And there are people who would think this is ridiculous. It's the sort of person who would go to a modern art exhibition and say, well, my kid who is 4 could do better than that. What's your take on that?
That's not their preference. I don't have a judgment of it. It feels, when I was younger, I didn't appreciate Rothko's, and now I can see the depth of the color. I've spent enough time around paint to see there's such richness and depth in these blocks of color. Like the one you have up there actually has more color than most of them. And there's something about just being lost in this large field of color. Like they're often at least 6 feet high. They're not small.
Yeah.
Like
Well, what
this
has changed?
is part of what's amazing.
So what do you think has changed in you, or what changes in people that they move from not understanding something or thinking it's crap or stupid to starting to appreciate it, whilst it's still a kind of, you could say on the face of it, pointless bit of color on a piece of wood, you know? What is the point of art? You know, basically it comes down to that.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. I think that I have become a more, I was going to say sophisticated, but more sensitive as an art viewer. And
Sensitive in what way?
like I'm really interested in feeling the artist's soul. And there's something about those fields of color. I feel very connected to the artist. But I'm a colorist. That's what I've been told. I personally love color.
Sometimes when I go to a modern art exhibition or museum, we have a few in Paris, and you see something, and on the face of it, you think that's just ridiculous. It could be literally a panel has been painted blue or white, or it's white with a slash in it. And on the one hand, I might think it's a little bit funny that, you know, it's in a modern art exhibition. One of the things I actually appreciate about things like that is that someone dared to do it and call it art,
Right.
and not be scared to say, this is what I've done, you know, take it or leave it. And then it ends up being in an art exhibition, you know, and I think, what is the criteria? What are the criteria for getting in a modern art exhibition? Does it have to be aesthetically pleasing, or does it just have to be something that no one else has done before?
That's a very complicated and political conversation if you talk to people in the art world. But I'm not a big fan of the very geometric, hard-edged modern art that you're describing. I tend to prefer things that look a little freer in expression. And in the art world, at least what I've been told, is it helps to be a man. It helps to have a really good story. If you want to have a museum, there are a lot of studies showing that women artists are greatly underrepresented. And like I have an old friend who's showed quite a bit in galleries, and he's really good at spinning a beautiful tale about his art. And he's encouraged me to do that. I'm not there yet. But that's part of what people like that. They want to know. They want to know the story. And for me, it's such a realm of the nonverbal. It's beyond words where the creation comes from. I don't have a big spin on what I'm up to.
It sounds like marketing meeting art.
Yeah, it's kind of the next phase. If you want to become really well known and kind of famous, there's so many people out there doing beautiful art that are unknown.
This one on the left is beautiful. Do you think that art should stand on its own, or it should be attached to the story of the artist? Do you think it needs to be, or how closely are they sort of linked, or should they be linked?
I think it should stand on its own. But again, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. What one person likes, another person won't.
It comes back, there's a story about, I think Adolf Hitler was an artist before he decided to be what he became. And there's the kind of philosophical mind game. If you loved one of his paintings and you didn't know it was his, and then you discovered it was his, what would your attitude be then to the painting? Would you then feel obliged to hate the painting because you hate what he became? I don't know if
I would hate the painting, but I wouldn't want one of his paintings.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want the energy of that in my space.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So as soon as you know something about the story of the painting, that becomes part of the painting. In a way.
Can, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like it to be like that because I find that painting is so personal. I want people to see more than just the colors, because if you just look at the colors, I mean, for example, Van Gogh, his paintings became so famous partly because he cut part of his ear off, I think, partly because he hardly sold anything as an artist. Now, that story became part of the legend of his paintings, I think.
Right. But that's very true of many artists, that they become well known posthumously. You know, like that they.
Yeah.
I can remember when I was just starting to paint, when I stopped doing the process-oriented art, and I really wanted to make art that would be in the world. There was just this urge to create things and put them into the world. I went into this gallery. I was on holiday with a friend, and we ran into this gallery because it was raining. And it ended up being a very high-end gallery. And I asked the guy, we were just talking about what it takes to sell paintings, and he was being encouraging to me, which was sweet. But he said that the one thing that'll increase the values of your paintings quite a lot is if you die. Because then there's a finite number. This is it. This is all.
Right.
Conversations.
Yeah. So did you decide to die, or you're still? Apparently, you're still here for the moment.
I suppose you could fake your death and start creating under another name.
So are you starting to market your paintings then?
What'd you say?
Are you starting to market your paintings seriously?
I mean, the website is a step in that direction. I wanted to make it easier for people to see a bunch of them. There's a bunch that I haven't had time to post yet. It takes a while to photograph them and get them up there. I just want to make it easier for people to buy them.
Yeah. But I mean, for the moment, there's no sort of real heavy commercial side, because I know that some artists that I know, I'm thinking of one person in particular. I went into his studio and they all looked the same. I mean, they were different, but in his style. He'd found his thing. And I actually felt that it was a bit of a production line, because as soon as you get known for something, your style, people like it, which is good, but then they want a painting for themselves in that style. And if you want to move away from that style, you feel kind of stuck because people don't want to know about it.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Do you think I asked you a little while ago, I'm not sure what happened to my question. Do you think you found your style, or do you think you need to?
No.
Because I'm looking at your pictures.
I think I did answer. It's just there's not an answer. Like I'm not worried about having a style or being consistent.
Right, because I'm looking at your pictures and I mean, I'm not surprised that they're yours. You know, I mean, they seem to have, for me, there is a style. There's something.
Well,
but
some of them are more graphic. You know, it's different periods of time. I played with different things. I bought these big stencils. I started putting that one in the middle there, had a big 3 and a 4 in it.
Ah, this one, yeah.
You know, some of them have numbers. I lost my fascination with adding letters and numbers. That was
So for you, there's nothing really representational right now. That's not what you do.
Yeah, no. I have when I left the process painting and started painting, I did a whole series of paintings that were more figurative, but even figurative ones were abstract because they felt very genderless. Like I painted over and over sort of a head and like what you would basically see on Zoom, I guess, a head and a torso with all this energy coming out of the heart. I painted that 100 times. If you go back to my Instagram feed, you can see some of them.
This one seems a little different. It's not the blocks of color. Yeah.
Well, like I said, the newer ones, like many of these paintings span about 2.5 years, maybe. But the ones that started during the quarantine are much blockier.
A dive into infinity. I like this one because it has the word infinity in it. But even if I didn't know that, I might think it's I don't know. It makes me think of a traffic light for some reason, a red traffic light. But what is it for you? Does it have any Does it represent anything for you, like more solid than infinity? It's not a
No,
traffic light, I guess.
no, I was definitely not trying to paint a traffic light.
Yeah, because this is inspiring. That whenever I look at people's abstract art, it inspires me, because I think you can do stuff like that and, you know, not feel embarrassed about it. Because sometimes I think I should be. There's something in me in the background that is saying, you know, are you really going to show that to people? Do you find that people you coach,
I
for
have those
example?
thoughts too, but I've learned to ignore them. That
Okay.
doesn't matter if everybody likes my paintings. To me, it's originally, you know, for more than 20 years, I was in this process-oriented school where the one rule was you never showed your paintings. It'd be like publishing
Okay.
your personal journal. Like it
Uh-huh.
was my relationship really to the infinite
Mm-hmm.
in those paintings, and some of them are um, the content can be quite out there, and so for me, there was a whole journey of just getting used to showing my paintings. Like when I first started painting, I always had a wall of art behind me, but it wasn't my art. And when I started
Mm.
painting, I would experiment with just on some calls, not calls I was leading. I would like put one of my paintings behind me
Mm.
and feel so subconscious that anybody would see my art. So it's been a whole journey of allowing my paintings to be in the world and to not take personally what people think. It's just their preferences. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean I should paint the way they want me to paint. I'm doing it for me, and I'm doing it and my hope is to touch people,
Mm.
but it's not me listening to what people want and then painting that. I'm doing what's calling me. The direction is coming from inside, not from outside.
Do you get comments from people on your paintings when they're
I,
with you and they say, "Did you do that?"
Mostly people say kind things.
Yeah.
I made a video recently for a Facebook group I'm in. We had to post a Facebook Live, and I feel like people didn't even listen to my video. They wanted to know how they could get this pink painting. And I found that fascinating because I actually like having it in my office. It's not for sale yet.
Ah, okay. Well, that's not bad, is it?
But it was nice.
People.
There was lovely feedback, like, "Oh, people like my paint." You know, these people like
Mm.
painting.
What do they see in it? Why do people say they like them?
They didn't say. They were just like, "Oh my God, I love the painting," stuff like that.
Hmm.
I'm not because I paint abstractly. I'm not asking them what they see. I don't care. Like, use your imagination. See what you want. And it's fine if they want to tell me, but it doesn't mean anything to me.
Why would people spend many, many hours of their lives doing jobs which they maybe don't particularly find exciting, or they're based on sort of number crunching or whatever it is, and in their spare time they would spend a lot of the money that they've earned on something like an abstract painting? What are people looking for?
Reminders of truth, ways to touch that beauty that lives inside of us. I think that's the doorway art can provide.
Hmm.
You know, my hope is my paintings touch people in that way, that remind them
Hmm.
of the truth and the beauty of who they are, the beauty of this experience of being alive.
Hmm.
And also because it's abstract, there's a lot more, in my experience, there's a lot more room for the viewer to
Hmm.
interact. Like the story isn't clear. The viewer gets to participate in a way that when something's very realistic, the story's kind of there already. I think there's a lot more room for interaction, even if the artist is never present.
Instead of it being a picture of a horse and people say, nice horse.
Right, right.
They can't say nice horse. And then maybe they search for something else to think, how is it touching me? Why am I
Right,
being touched by this pink blob?
right, right,
And it's
right.
funny to not know, in a way. Why would
Yeah.
I be so Keith, why would I find this pink blob so beautiful? I've got another question or two, and then we'll be saying bye-bye. Unbelievable. We've talked about art for 50 minutes. I'm very happy about that.
Need to stop a little before noon because I have a client.
So last question then, or two. No, Despina just says, a dive into infinity, the eye of the beholder. I see an eye. Okay. And she also says, of all your paintings, Sandra, the dive into infinity is my favorite. There is a reflection in it. There is black, my favorite color, and some hidden fears under that red eye. This is how I feel this painting.
Nice.
And she's talking about this one.
Yeah. No, it's fun to hear. I like it.
Yeah, it's wonderful, isn't it? Yeah. And I mean, I never feel that my painting is anything other than once it's gone from me, it takes on its own life form, as it were, floats around a bit until it reaches someone else. I really like that idea.
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful.
So we'll say bye-bye. Is there anything you'd like to finish with?
No, it's just been really fun to talk to you. You're great at interviewing, and it's fun to talk to a fellow artist.
Yeah, I mean, art's a funny thing, isn't it? There's no right or wrong. That's one of the things I love it, especially the abstract art, as I said. There's just no right or wrong. And I think that's something I can carry over to helping people in their lives. You know, there's no right or wrong way to lead your life. I think that's one of the reasons I like it so much.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a mirror of life. Thank you, Sab.
Yeah, it's been so nice to talk to you. Thank you for being my first guest. I'm so happy and excited. I now have a show. And you're it.
Thank you. And thank you to the audience for your lovely comments.
Yeah, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for people watching on the replay. And if you are an amazingly creative person, or you just love creating stuff, then get in touch and you can be our next guest. All right, that's great. Sandra, thanks so much. And I'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Yeah, I would love that.
Okay.